Hi, Suzanne. Thanks so much for joining me today. It's
Hello,
great to have you. So here in Dubai, we've got the mBraining Master Coach program coming up. And just ahead of that, I've had some feedback and a few questions. So that's the purpose of our session today. So Suzanne, not many people in this part of the world know much about you. So would you like to give yourself a quick intro?
Yeah, quick intro. Who am I? I am Suzanne, obviously. I live in Auckland, New Zealand. I've been here for 14 years. I started my professional life in healthcare, so I still have a heart for healthcare. I love all things health and well-being, and still forms a large part of what I do. But I went into education in the 90s and kind of spent a fair number of years, 20 odd years in education, ending up as an associate professor in health and social science. So I guess the other reason that that's relevant to say is I love the academic side of this. I love the research side of it. I love reading the papers, and I love knowing that the information we're using comes from a solid evidence base. So my background absolutely kind of weaves into what I do today. And also because I was in medical imaging, of course, a lot of that evidence comes through the imaging studies. So I feel like I have maybe an advantage in terms of interpreting some of that data and understanding what they mean by PET scans or MRI scans. So yeah, that was my background. And now I'm what I call myself is a neuroscience-based coach and counselor. And I work largely in stress and anxiety, little t trauma, depression, working with a couple of GP practices and private clients. And when I'm not doing that, I'm training other people to do what I do around the world. So
excellent, super exciting. Yeah, well, I met you back in 2015, back in Bath in the UK, when I attended trainers training. And I think one of the first things that I picked up about you, you described yourself as a head on legs. Or you had been described as a head on legs.
No, it's not very flattering, is it? I remember when the person said that to me, and we're good friends now, I didn't know her then. She kind of said, oh, you're a head on legs, you. And I was quite offended. I came out quite defensive and said, I'm quite an effective head on legs. You know, absolutely. I was in a senior academic position. I was well published and well known within my field. But yeah, I didn't have any idea of the wider kind of full use of brains at that point. Of course, I had a heart. And of course, in some context, that heart came to the fore. But when I was in my kind of professional role, I very much relied on my head and didn't necessarily tap into particularly the heart. So learning how to do that for me was life-changing, revolutionary, challenging at times, because I had to learn how to live life with a heart. And suddenly, you know, my heart was open and all excited, and then people walked on it and I had to go, oh, hang on, shut that back down again and just work out again slowly and safely. So it was a big change for me, learning about this for myself. And I guess it's why I'm so passionate about it for other people.
Okay. And you worked very closely with Grant Susalu for lots of years. So how did you sort of step into working with him?
So I'm laughing because I was obviously on this course as someone who was a little bit guarded, it has to be said at that point, and didn't know him at all, didn't know, I think, hardly anybody else in the room. So I was kind of watching what was going on. And I guess he had seen my application form, you know, associate professor, researcher. And I went up to him in a tea break and I said, hey, Grant, have you heard the latest research that diarrhea is hereditary? And he said, no. And I was deadpan, absolute deadpan. He said, no, I haven't. Tell me about that. And I said, yeah, it runs in your genes. And we just laughed and giggled together. And it kind of was the start of a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful relationship where, yeah, we got to know each other beyond the roles, where we got to know each other as people. And I used a lot of my academic kind of access to articles and access to researchers to support mBraining in those early days. And for 10 years, had the absolute privilege of working closely with him and being mentored by him and being a friend, and he used to call me sister. So yeah, a very, very positive time in my life of having that opportunity of working with him.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Yeah, I'm so thankful for Grant and you and Wilbert as well, because I had all of you as my trainers after I first discovered the power of mBraining. So yeah, I have gathered some questions about, I'd say really it's kind of building on to sort of mBraining has been around for a little while now, and we do have a lot of coaches out there. And I suppose the first question really is, how does mBIT, the multiple brain integration techniques, how does that add on to an experienced coach's skills?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's almost like, how long have we got? The short answer would be the obvious one, is that a lot of coaching kind of is a talk approach that's head-based, language-based, head-based, logic, analysis. Where are you? Where would you like to be? How do you create the steps in between there and here? With mBraining, the basis is sat in that embodied cognition. So it's about tapping into the heart and the gut, particularly at coach cert level, to get the wider wisdom that is not just head brain. The head brain can be incredibly good at telling all sorts of stories. If anybody listening has ever wanted to do something and thought, I'll do this on, in the next 6 months, and it's all been head brain, and then they don't take action. Immediately as an mBIT coach, you would know that there's no alignment between the head, the heart, and the gut. So I think for me, that's the biggest thing, is it brings in the embodied cognition, which is big business in coaching at the moment. It's becoming really popular. But what mBraining does so beautifully is give you the how. So that would be my short answer, is that it takes you to an embodied wisdom, an embodied intelligence, and it teaches you the how of doing that in a safe way.
Fabulous. Okay. All right. And so as an mBraining coach, we know that it's a really powerful modality, and really sort of connecting you below the neck, I think is a nice expression. So what are the benefits, skills, or outcomes for an mBIT certified coach to step up and explore master coach? What's the difference between an mBraining coach level and a master coach?
Yeah, it is another level of practice again, on lots of levels. So in terms of just the sheer brains and intelligences you're working with, you're adding in another two, the autonomic nervous system and the pelvis. But then also even within the kind of coach cert material. So let me give an example that an mBIT coach would understand, and maybe others wouldn't, and they might like to come and train to be an mBIT coach in order to understand it. We talk about the prime functions at coach cert level, that each of the brains has 3 prime functions. And we talk about the fact that sometimes there are neural integrative constraints between the brains, so that the heart might give up its emoting kind of function, and the head might take that on and try and work out with a list what it wants to do. Well, we know that that's not going to work well. At master coach level, what we also start to throw in the mix is that you can have those nicks within brains. So you might have a nick across the prime functions within one brain. So what master coach does, above and beyond adding in the other intelligences, which in itself is worth its weight in gold, is also start to open up those complicated clients that might not have got a shift at coach cert level, because there might have been a nick within a brain running, or because that nick or blockage might have been within the autonomic nervous system. Now you can work with them. So for me at Master Coach, it expands the scope of practice enormously. It cheekily takes you outside of pure coaching into that gray area between coaching and therapy. So you can really start to do some deep work. I'm not suggesting you're going to be a therapist. You would still refer on to therapists, but it definitely extended my scope of practice, to the point that I changed my niche completely as a result of training in Master Coach.
Oh, wow. Interesting. So did you further define your niche in that way because you had sort of these additional skills and tools?
Yeah, not deliberately. I didn't go out to redefine a niche, but just the work that started coming and what I could do with the work that came took it to a whole new level. And very much my work these days has moved into that kind of state regulation, stress, anxiety, depression, as I say, little t trauma, that just was always on the edge of where I could, or where I felt I could safely go before. And now my scope has encompassed that. There's still a boundary to which I would refer on to therapists. But as I say, I'm really lucky that I work with a couple of GP practices and they refer me patients, having found out what I do, know that I'm safe, and then we work in parallel, and we're getting some really lovely results that I couldn't have done with the coach cert.
Yeah, I think the other thing about master level is building your confidence and experience. It takes it to a whole new level.
100%. Because in it, like all of this stuff, in order to be able to do it for other people, you have to have done it for yourself. So the level of my own understanding about me that I've got from that has also just been phenomenal. And through that, some healing, some growth, some extension. Yeah, absolutely. I could spend an hour kind of talking about the advantages of going to Master Coach. But like any of this stuff, until you start to do it and embody it, you don't really get it.
Yeah. I know it's interesting for me because I'm not yet certified as Master Coach level, and I'm so excited to be bringing you to Dubai. I have been very aware of the language that you use. You use words like bubbling and tingling and excitement. I'm assuming I'm linking it to when you talk about the autonomic nervous system. So can you share a little bit about how that works in mBraining and coaching?
Yeah, so again, if you go back to coach cert level and you talk about the heart, anatomically, pretty much everyone knows where their heart is, right? It's about fist size. It's pretty central. It goes over to the left a little bit at the bottom. So everyone knows where the heart is. So when you're accessing the heart, you kind of know where to put your attention. If you want to put your hand on it, and we know that that fires up the physical connection that helps then the sensation connection, you know where to put it. With gut, a little bit more spread out because it goes all the way from mouth to anus. But most people, if you say put your hand on your gut, will go abdominally. And we might, as skilled mBIT coaches, pick up the voice or the mouth or, you know, higher up. With the ANS, where would you put your hand? Where would you connect?
I want to do all of this.
So it's so much more difficult to kind of pinpoint it. Therefore, you've got to be alert and open to the fact that that ANS can speak to you anywhere in the body. That might mean that it overlaps kind of anatomically with some of the other body parts. And also, for me, what I found is we rely so much more on those sensory connections with the ANS. So that's why words like tingle, bubble, get under your skin, give me goosebumps can give an indication to you if you're the coach and they talk about those things, then you're calibrating ANS, but also to kind of just artfully guide them as to where to look, and you're almost doing a whole body scan. Where is there a sense, a tingle, an excitement, a bubbling? So that's where that kind of word comes in useful.
Amazing, amazing. So does does working with the autonomic nervous system, does that tap into a lot more energy?
Yeah, so anything energy mobilize, any energy homeostasis, anything temperature. So if you have the shivers, hot under the collar, anything temperature, it's ANS.
Okay. Does that link at all with tropical moments that I often experience?
I'm kind of guessing they might have a hormonal input.
Possibly.
But the hormonal system's very closely linked to the ANS. So, you know, they'll be linked, but the driver probably is hormonal. But we often hear those temperature related terms unrelated to hormonal influence.
Yeah. I know I've experienced both working with clients and, you know, being a client and being coached, you know, sweating. There are sometimes when the shift and changes are happening, you know, there's a lot of sweating going on. I prefer it when it's in the client than when I'm the coach. But back to those hot flushes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, temperature is a big part, and anything that is temperature related is always ANS linked.
Yeah. Oh, it's fascinating, isn't it? Oh, I'm getting all excited and tingling. That must be my ANS talking to me.
What's it alerting you to?
Yeah. And can you share a little bit about the pelvic brain and how that sort of comes into play in coaching and mBraining?
Yeah, so pelvic brain is, obviously people will generally think of sexual function, and it is that to some extent, but it's way more than that. So pelvic brain is almost like a deeper form of identity. But whereas gut is I identity, pelvic brain is going identity outwards into community. So it's we. So it's kind of that link to service. There's a link to the spiritual and purposing, legacy leaving. So especially at the moment, I'm finding for a lot of clients, they're going to those existential questions. And to answer those, to be able to drop into pelvic brain is really, really useful. For females, we've got the other kind of nurture function, which is in both genders, but I think is particularly high in a female, that you're nurturing as well, giving birth to, even that might not be giving birth to a human baby, but giving birth to something, whether it's a business, a book, an idea. So it comes up regularly. It's like all of this stuff. Once you can calibrate for it, you realize it's been there all along, but you wouldn't have coached to that depth in the past because you didn't quite pick up on the calibrations.
Wow, exciting.
So one of my favorite words linked to pelvis is vitality.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're not living a vitality driven life, a full of energy life, that urge to be fully you, then there may be a block at pelvic level.
And does that get impacted by medical issues as well?
Yeah, for sure. All of this, you know, if you have chemical imbalances, if you have hormonal imbalances, if you have literally surgery, hysterectomy, oophorectomy, any of that, then there's going to be an impact potentially, none of which, you know, you can work with any of it. So I don't know if you, I'm sure you are aware, maybe I'm assuming you're aware that I've written a preoperative script that was designed around a hysterectomy, but has actually been used in multiple pre-operations now.
Wow.
But even if somebody hasn't done that work pre-op, the body will have shared that information in the body before losing that part. So you can go in and seek where that is. If you do it pre-operatively, you can set that up so the body deliberately leaves that knowledge somewhere.
Oh, amazing. Amazing. I'm tingling again. Okay. Oh. Yes. Is it October the 16th? Yeah. I need you here now. Okay. Suzanne, I always think of you as the champion when it comes to the science research and all these new evidence findings that supports mBraining. And I know that you've already shared that you've made lots of updates to the mBIT coach and master coach programs. So curiosity kicking in. How do you do that?
Curiosity killed the cat, so I'm not sure that I like that. Yeah, how do I do that? How do I do it? Why do I do it? How can you not do it? Oh, so many questions. Let's go back in history.
Mm-hmm.
In the early 90s, I did a PhD. My PhD was on continuing professional development.
Oh, wow. Yes, that would help.
Right? So as part of my philosophy of life, if you like, it is about professional development, keeping up to date, being credible, having the latest knowledge. If you look at the whole start of the Master Coach, we talk about what mastery is. And we talk about how it is a mix of skills and expertise. Well, of course, expertise has to come with underpinning knowledge. That underpinning knowledge needs to be up to date, needs to be research informed. So it's kind of, for me, an absolute given. It's almost like this is pelvic brain talk, but I couldn't not do it.
Yeah.
Because it is just fundamental to an evidence-based, neuroscience-based, cutting-edge modality. So, of course, my courses are updated and they're constantly being updated. It's almost like, and anyone who's linked to mBrainingglobal.com will have seen, I think I put up 4 papers today. So it is just so fast now, the rate of knowledge coming through. In fact, I read a paper the other day off LinkedIn that said that the rate of knowledge in the world is doubling every 12 hours.
Wow. That's crazy, isn't it?
It is crazy. So our challenge, because when mBraining came out in 2012, it was well ahead of its time. It's hard to even go back in that mindset now and think nobody else was talking about head, heart, and gut, really. There was a couple of leadership references. HeartMath was doing the heart, but there was very little that was bringing it all together. And now lots of people are bringing it all together. But very few other people have the level of science and evidence underpinning the tool that they created. So in order for me, my take, my belief, but in order for us to stay there at the head of the game, we've got to make sure that we stay up to date. So that's why I do it. How I do it, it takes time. And it takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, all of which is effectively unpaid. So I guess you've got to care enough and value enough to put that time into it. And I read daily papers, books, podcasts I listen to. In fact, there was a lovely one out today from Andrew Huberman. If you're not familiar with the Huberman Lab, go and sign up to his podcast. He's a Stanford professor. And his one today was all about reading books and how just reading books changes the language with which you can speak about the detail within the book. So if you listen on audio, it's not the same. Fascinating, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's about how would I do it if I wasn't me and just didn't do it because I do it? How could you start that sort of practice? It would be reading everything you can get your hands on, being so passionate about the material that you're willing to invest time that doesn't get paid back just to enhance your own knowledge base. Reading academic papers and critically reviewing them, which is done really nicely with other people. So come along to the wisdom call, because we often will pick up a topic that's new in research and discuss it there. Get involved in the discussion on mbraining.com, where that research is constantly being updated.
Yeah, you do post a lot of updates on mBraining global.com, which, yes, I go through phases where I keep you in my inbox to go and read it, and then it's like, oh well, that's weeks old, and then there's the latest one, and it's, I suppose it's getting into the habits.
It is habits.
Yeah.
Habits. And we know that if you wait until you're motivated, you'll wait till old age, right? So you've got to start with a discipline of a baby step a day. It might just be reading one abstract a day. Changing some of your feeds on Facebook so that something like, say, I don't know, neuroscience today is linked in with your Facebook so that whatever they post at least shows up. Not all of them will be relevant, but some of them will. But set up those baby step disciplines to start the process going. And then for me, the more I do it, the more I want to do it, because I am just fascinated by what I'm reading. Like some of the stuff I've uncovered in the last few weeks is phenomenal. Even down to things like new neurons being discovered we didn't know existed. How can you not get excited with that? This is our body anatomy that we're still finding out about. There's a new imaging style of imaging coming out that claims to be able to image the body in much more detail. So at the moment, one of the reasons the head brain is way more studied is because it's kind of separated off and the blood flow is kind of restricted in as much as the vessels are quite clearly delineated. So it's quite easy to see the function in the brain tissue as well as the arteries and veins being there. If you take the heart, there's so much blood flowing through the heart. It's really hard to see the wall, the function, the kind of structure. But they're claiming there's this new imaging out that will do that, and that it will do it in heart and gut. That gets me so excited, because if we're still discovering neurons in the head brain, imagine what they're going to start finding in the heart and gut that backs up what we've been teaching, or challenges it and means that actually we have to adjust our materials to go, well, we thought we knew this, but now we know this. And as I've been updating for Master Coach over the last 4 or 5 months or so, there's been a couple of bits where I've actually had to replace what was in the course.
Wow.
So not just extend it, but actually say that's no longer deemed to be true.
Okay.
Excites me.
Yeah, I can see that. You look all tingly and excited.
I know.
Okay, so how can, well, I suppose I'm answering my own question in the head, in my head. How can coaches and even trainers sort of, especially if we don't feel academic, what can we do to, keep updated?
Yeah, so that whole term academic is quite interesting, right? Because I don't feel academic.
Oh, but you are.
In your perception.
Yes.
So I wonder whether even just putting the word on it blocks some people. That it almost gives an excuse to say, well, I don't do that because I'm not academic, or I'm not into science, or I'm not into detail, so therefore I don't do that. Kind of begs the question, controversially, well, if you're not doing that, who is? And how's the field staying ahead? So, I think for me, again, I come back to my whole bias and filter is, why wouldn't you? And anybody can.
Yeah.
So if it's not about ability, because anyone could read those papers, there are some that are so language inappropriate that I go, there was one the other day, actually, Gail put up, I don't know if you saw it, Gail put one up on mBrainingglobal.com, lovely paper, but boy, was it in that academic field. And so I think my comment back was, breathe. And then again, you realize how much you don't know.
Yeah.
So sometimes, you will read stuff that you go, I don't get it. It's not relating to me, but so many you will absolutely get information from. And if you then start to talk to other people and discuss those findings, then that will help to kind of make it more concrete and embed in. So I think everybody can do it. It's whether or not it's important enough for people to do it.
Yeah. I remember one of the tools that Grant shared was the CIA.
Yeah.
What's the concept? What are the implications? What are the applications? Yeah. And I know for my mBraining coach certification, I actually created a slide. I listened to his questions and I wrote them down. I've created one slide. Yeah, I need to print off that slide and have it somewhere visual. I think
we teach that again, because that comes up. That comes up in Loving Your Life, doesn't it? I think.
Is it? Possibly. I'm not sure. Somewhere in the world of Grant Sousley, yeah. I heard it or saw it and thought, I need to make note of this. And I just think
it was him modeling himself about how he learned new things and how he then applied it. And so we teach that in Master Coach. We teach the whole process. We teach where it came from in terms of the paper that first kind of sparked his conscious knowledge of how he does that. It was all about an embodied cognition. So yeah, CIA really important way of doing that, but it still relies on catching the concept. Well, if you're not reading papers and you're not part of discussions, the other thing, controversially, I would say, is we know that we're like the 5 people we spend most time with. So if you want to be into reading research, critiquing research, being up to date,
I need to hang out with people who are into reading and research and being up to date.
You do.
Yeah.
And so just that shift alone, going and spending time with people who love that stuff, who are doing that stuff, might be enough to get you onto that kind of habit.
Yeah, so the practice sessions and the global wisdom calls are, yeah, so useful just to hear, you know, as a coach and trainer, the curiosity that comes out, and when every time you say, well, for those of you who are master coaches, it's like, I want this, I want this. So I pay extra attention there, thinking, what can I learn? What can I learn?
What's she talking about now?
Yeah.
But you know, even the master coach stuff. So because if I go back to my comment about my scope of practice changing, what's happened is, as it's changed, I've felt I also need to learn other modalities to be able to accommodate that shift.
Yeah.
So I'll often share some of that more integrated, broader stuff within the wisdom call. And in fact, the master coach package that I run has a day 6 that is wholly that.
Yeah. Okay. You're going to be sharing the polyvagal.
Integrated polyvagal workshop. Yep.
Wow. So how does that partner with, does it partner with mBraining in how you apply it? Okay.
Yeah. So a lot of what I have put in that day 6 is stuff that has come out since Master Coach was written. And because Master Coach is already pretty packed, so the coach, you know, everyone does it slightly differently, but Grant and I always used to train from 9 till 6:30 every day. Apart from day 4, you might have got away by 6 if you're lucky, right? So if you're not training till 6:30, kind of begs the question, what are you leaving out? And the master coach is very similar. In fact, many of the master coach days went beyond 6:30 when Grant was training it with me. So I tried to keep them till 6:30, but it meant that there wasn't a great deal of space to put the new stuff in. So the next logical approach was to go, well, let's have another day that lifts the practical application of polyvagal into day 6, so that we leave Master Coach largely as it was, although because of the amount of updating, there's tweaks. But any brand new material is now in that day 6 and very practical in its approach.
Super exciting. Wow. I guess preparation. How can we best prepare ourselves as mBraining coaches to be ready for mBIT Master Coach? You know, is there any pre-reading that you'd recommend? Is there any, you know, yes, being super familiar with the mBraining book, reading that again, and grabbing an opportunity to reload the mBIT Coach Cert, if that's available, having conversations and discussions and sharings, so global wisdom calls, practice sessions, whatever we can hop on and do. But is there any any books that you could recommend for preparing us?
Yeah, there's no absolute musts. So if people are going to say, hey, look, it's only 8 weeks ago, I haven't got a whole heap of time to go and buy books and then read them, that's absolutely fine. You'll get everything you need on the course. In terms of personal prep, I would be saying, start to get curious about your ANS talking to you. So there may be some people listening to this who haven't even decided whether to come.
Yet.
Yet, absolutely. So the first obvious place to go to is heart. What does your heart truly desire? If your heart truly desires, it wants to come. From there, I then go out to the ANS. What is your body system alerting you to? And get the detail and wisdom behind what it is going to get, rather than going to the head-based story next, which is where you would go foundational sequence. So go out to the body and get the body intelligence and wisdom on what it's alerting you to. And it will know, because it's probably been sat waiting to be spoken to, right? You've been connecting with the body for a long time, and the ANS has been treated a bit like a wiring system that is connecting, but actually the ANS has intelligence in its own right. So if you knew the ANS was waiting to speak, and if you listened into your body for that communication, I'd be curious what it's already saying to you. So that would be one of the preps I'd say, is begin to really get into your body and listen and feel in particular. So that would be my biggest prep. If people do want books, there's a couple of absolute gems. So the pelvis one at the moment that I would recommend is a book called Pussy by Regina Thomas Hauer. It was a New York bestseller. It's challenging read in places, but it absolutely goes to that deeper sense of vitality of it being your life force. So that relates really well to mBraining Master Coach. So that would be my pelvic book of choice. And if I was going to go for one ANS book, it would be Deb Starner, Polyvagal in Clinical Therapy. But there are lots of ANS books out there. So there's many, many others that, and I will give a recommendation list of my current reading on the course. I don't want to overload people at this point. We're only 8 weeks out and we want them to sign up and come and join us. I don't want to put them off.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yeah, engage that gut and do it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
Fabulous. How exciting. Okay, I think the only other question I have for you is, as a community, what could we do more of, or how could we best utilize mBrainingglobal.com? Because it's so resourceful. There's some great information up there. There's, the research findings, there's pulse things, there's all sorts. And it's an opportunity to give ourselves more visibility as a coach. Any top tips on what we could do to contribute more, to be more involved, to gain more?
All of that. So get involved. Don't just, I think the temptation has been that people are using it as a resource to take the papers I put up. We would get way more value if we started discussing those papers, doing the CIA on them, asking what if on them, applying them with a client, and then feeding that back as a case study. So absolutely get involved on it. In terms of, people may not know where that website came from. A couple of years ago, I was invited to speak on the Embodiment Conference. And there were 500,000 people on that course. Wow. And I was being asked to talk on mBraining. So my thinking was, if even just a small percentage of people want to follow up with coaching, we need somewhere that we can send people to, because I can't cope with all of those numbers. So I quickly contacted a small handful of people who had been in regular touch with me, who had done work with me, or who had come and studied on the Next Level course, which is also an mBIT course. And I just I had a week. I had to sort it out in a week. So we designed the website and we just shoulder tapped this small group of people and said, do you want to have a profile on there? That has never been updated in terms of profiles because it wasn't really clear where that sat in the bigger scheme of things or what we were actually offering. It was really for that embodiment conference. All the research stuff has stayed current since then, and that side of the website is live and current and up and active. Ultimately, I think what will happen with the other side is that it will become a membership site, and then people will be able to advertise themselves either as a coach or a trainer, and we'll probably have some accreditation scheme on there so that, you know, we've got close on 3,000 mBIT coaches in the world at the moment. But there's very different levels of participation and engagement in that, in terms of who you would want to pick as a coach. So what I'd love to be able to do is have a membership site that then says, these are the people who are up to date, who have kept up with the research, who have done their own professional development, who are in supervision, etc., etc. So we will, yeah, put that up in time. So if you're interested in that, get involved in the discussion now while we're having the discussion and have your say of what that might look like. Yeah, absolutely. But that it's a participatory, co-collaborative platform. And yet at the moment, it's predominantly people saying, oh, thanks very much, thanks very much, thanks very much. And they're not really making it two-way. So that's the most effective way to get stuff out of it, is to make it work more, come on the wisdom calls, get to know the group of people who are kind of in this space, pushing the field forwards and be part of it.
Yeah. Which totally aligns with, you know, the collaboration community is the way forward, but there's extra seeds there now.
Well, you see, there'll be 2 more highest expressions, won't they? And they will all see. So maybe the other prep is considering what the highest expression of ANS and pelvis might be.
Yeah. Brilliant, brilliant.
Not curious. You can be curious, but curious won't be one of the answers.
Yeah, I think I've heard them mentioned before, and we'll leave that question open. Yeah. Okay, well, I'm out of questions right now, Suzanne, but I'd like to say a huge thank you for your time and energy and all of your efforts that we continually benefit from, which is awesome. And I'm super excited to getting you into Dubai for the mBIT Master Coach. So yeah, awesome.
Yeah, I guess I would say, if you're even considering it, get in touch with Wendy or I, have a conversation, have your questions answered, because, you know, business is business. If we don't get a viable number, that's not going to run. And so we need a couple more people. If you're sitting on the edge right now, please do come and book your place, have that conversation. I can then book my flights and we can start really getting excited and tingling under the skin.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I can help with hotel accommodation as well. We've got some good rates going. Excellent. So let's make this happen. Thank you, Suzanne, and thank you for everybody for some awesome questions.